Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're meeting in the premises of the Economic and Social Committee, which has been kind enough to accommodate us today because the Council or the Committee is very interested in matters relating to financial inclusion, banking matters. You see at the entrance to this room three opinions that deal with inclusion. They're in French and in English. I hope you'll find them. You'll look perhaps particularly the one that deals with financial education, which deals with the subject we shall be discussing today and which you'll be working on. Now, having said that, in connection with the reception we're being given by the EESC, I'd like to thank you for having invited me to introduce this conference. This is a subject which is very close to my heart. I've had occasion to work on the subject as a representative of consumer associations for very many years. And this in particular when in France we started working on consumer credit laws. That doesn't make me sound any younger. It was actually back in 1978, and the task was very important. And then more recently, I participated in relevant work in France, and I take part in the work of the European Economic and Social Committee, which, as I've said, is very interested in this issue. In our society, having a bank account on which you can have your salary paid and your various benefits is indispensable. Now, we know that at present some consumers, if they want to cash checks which are given to them, have to leave a significant percentage to the agencies that deal with cashing of these checks. For example, I know of a case in which a check was handed into an agency for cashing, and the agency levied something between 10 and 20%, which is extraordinary. A bank account, which is the first sign of being bankable and of financial inclusion, is also indispensable if you wish to carry out payment operations by check or by card or transfer or direct debit. All of these are means which are used today. You wouldn't imagine in most countries of the EU keeping your money at home and paying your rent in cash or your bills for services and so forth in cash and for your purchases, particularly when they represent a significant sum. And anyway, the system doesn't make this possible. Salaries and benefits are paid in by check, by transfer, and cash payments are prohibited in some countries beyond a certain threshold. Besides, the importance of having a bank account and payment means has become all the more indispensable because many transactions are actually carried out via the internet at the national level, the European, or even the international level, where competition is increasing. In 2011, according to Eurostat, 58% of internet surfers in the EU ordered goods and services by internet over the last 12 months. And the easiest way of dealing with this is to use a card, even though this does represent certain risks. And some cases have been brought to our attention in our consumer associations. But even if we know that bank systems are not the same from one state to another, the degree to which people are banked is different, it is important that this issue be addressed at the European level in order to assure consistency and to make it possible for the internal market to develop. Financial inclusion requires all consumers to have access to financial services, whatever their level of income. They have to have a bank account from which they can carry out payment, transfer, and debit operations under financial conditions which are affordable to them. This is perhaps a second question that needs to be debated here. The charging of bank services has become a real issue, in particular given bank charges which are applied and the differential in charges for the same service, a differential which is unjustified, and charges applied to people who have financial difficulties when their checks bounce, when they're not properly funded, when their overdraft limits are exceeded. In countries such as mine, before a certain time when legislation was drawn up, you could invoice a sum going up to €100 for a check that bounced. The need to have an account is in fact not challenged. Besides, in a number of countries of the Union, the authorities for a long time now have put in place in France in the last 30 years laws that make it compulsory to open an account. And this has to be possible for anyone who requests this. This is not just to render services to consumers, but also to prevent tax fraud, which is related to illegal work or trafficking. But this has led to a financial system being set up which needs to be reliable and accessible to the majority of people. More recently, given the advance in banking in all socioeconomic relations, it has become increasingly indispensable to have an account. But being entitled to an account has proved to be insufficient. A whole range of services have to be provided. I know in France, but also in Belgium, since 1998, both in terms of principle and, in fact, since 2001, because this is when the implementing decree was issued, a basic banking service, the content of which has been the subject of decisions in the Advisory Committee for the Financial Sector, have to be available. And these essential services have to be provided to consumers. So the opening of an account, the possibility of effecting operations from this account with the existing means, all of this has to be made available. And consumer organizations have been able to ensure that this is free of charge. But the administrative procedures involved are complicated and deflect some people. The setting up of these services has led banks to make grouped offers which are very similar in their content, but which cost on average €36 per year. This is the amount which has been announced by the Observatory of the Banque de France. That said, mere access to a bank account is not enough. Consumers need to have access to a complete range of services and financial products, whatever their situation is. In this respect, it has to be clear that problems related to supply essentially have to do with consumers that have low incomes or irregular incomes. The question of the profile of clients plays an important role in banking. For example, all studies demonstrate that the nature of credit which is proposed, for example, a personal loan, which is usually at a lower rate, or revolving credit or other forms of credit, differ according to the profile of the borrower, and the interest rate related to these different financial instruments is all the higher if the customer appears more risky. And he has to accept these proposals because he has no alternative. The directive on consumer credit has come up with responses which need to be completed. Besides, some countries have adopted more binding provisions. For example, a usurious rate, this is very important, has to be dealt with, and limits to renewable credit, the ban on commissions being applied to salaried workers, differing according to the type of credit that they apply for. These rules have been built in, as well as a number of rules on intermediaries, which are extremely important, given that people in difficulty not only have to deal with banks directly, but also have to go through all sorts of intermediaries whose ethical standards are not always very high. It's certain that new forms of credit have to be developed which are more suited to the needs of all consumers, including those considered to be risky. Microcredit for low-income clients can offer an alternative, but the charges applied must not be prohibitive. In a recent discussion here, I discovered that in the UK, microcredit is offered at an interest rate of 35%, even though the sums borrowed are small, and even though maturities are flexible. One has to say that this credit, which is offered in order to help people in difficulty borrow money, at 35% is really astonishing, and I still disagree with this system. Discussions this afternoon and in the course of the day may make it possible for new ideas to emerge on this complex question of access to credit, but this is one of the most important subjects that we have to deal with, and it will become increasingly important in the present difficult period with people losing their jobs. So, on the one hand, new forms have to be adapted, and flexibility has to be provided. At least this is my opinion. It remains that households need savings products which are suited to every level of income. In most cases, this is precautionary savings. In the present context of financial crisis, it is a good thing to reassert this, reaffirm this very, very clearly. That is, that the households in question cannot afford to run any kind of risk. Finally, it's important to make it possible for them to have access to basic insurance products, because it's well known that people on low incomes often abandon the idea of being insured. And yet to be insured is indispensable in many fields, and an absence of an insurance policy can actually contribute to making the situation already in difficulty even worse, particularly when they have to deal with any kind of claim. Financial inclusion, and I have seen in the statutes of or the articles of association that you deal with this, has to be accompanied by financial education and properly adapted information. Financial education is important, so the consumers should know how to make good use of the banking system, while realizing that under no circumstances can this replace the obligation incumbent on banks to provide clear and exhaustive information when they supply financial products, nor should they be deflected from their obligation to provide advice on products which is suited to people's needs. There's been a lot of discussion on entitlement to credit. This is an interesting concept. I've given a lot of thought to it, but in fact, this entitlement or this right should not end up in a tragic situation for people who just can't afford credit. So there is a need for discussion on this. We have to think hard about this right to credit, which may not be as imperative as some people would like it to be. Banking organizations and credit institutions undeniably have a role to play by improving transparency, simplifying and harmonizing the terminology that they use. Besides, supplying to consumers reliable, simple, affordable, accessible means and making it possible for them to compare offers is essential. Their relationship with their clients should not be limited to mere commercial solicitation, because it has to be said that all households receive a lot of offers from banks, but not just financial institutions, but also from various shops and department stores offering credit cards, and the form of credit they offer is the most expensive that exists. Consensus is emerging on the basis of the idea of financial inclusion being something which is necessary for people in difficulty and low income. It remains the authorities have a crucial role to play to make this possible. And this is a matter of general interest, particularly when it comes to fighting against social exclusion. Now, all of these subjects will be discussed in your roundtables, which will give rise to fruitful exchanges. I'm sure that some interesting prospects will be opened up. So good luck. You need this in order to deal with this difficult subject, particularly when it comes to finding solutions. Thank you.